Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, in our ongoing study in the letters of John. We now begin 2nd John, and it'll be chapter 1. Well, there's only one chapter, 2nd John, verses 1 through 5. Let's go to block 1. John addresses the church and its membership. Verse 1. The elder to the elect lady and her children, whom I love in truth, not only I, but all who know the truth. In the Greek it reads, from the presbyteros, the presbyter, or the elder of the church, to the elect lady, whom I love, and also all those having known the truth. And then verse 2, because of the truth that abides in us and will be with us forever. Because of the truth abiding in us and with us that will be unto the age. Now John the elder, he is the principal authority for the Ephesus churches. The elect lady is a metaphor for the church and its members. In the Old Testament, Israel is called wife, bride, mother, daughter. And in 1 Peter 5:13, the church is referred to as she. So it's a metaphor for the church and its members. And then Kruse on verse 2, this community of love exists among those who know the truth, a truth internalized by true believers. Cross-reference John 14:6. where Jesus says, I am the truth. The truth that we internalize is the truth that Jesus Christ is. The truth is the person of Christ. He is the revelation of God. He is the Savior, the way, the truth, and the life. That's in John 14:6. Let's go on to block 2 and take a look at verses 3 and 4. We are commanded to walk in the truth of Christ. Or we could say we are commanded to walk in the truth who is Christ. Verse 3. Grace, mercy, and peace will be with us from God the Father and from Jesus Christ, the Father's Son, in truth and love. In the Greek, grace, mercy, and peace will be with us from God the Father and from Jesus Christ, the Son, in truth and love. The Son, aletheia kai agape, and aletheia, in truth, kai agape, in love. And then verse 4, I was overjoyed to find your children walking in truth, as we have been commanded by the Father. And in the Greek it reads, I rejoiced exceedingly in that I have discovered your children walking in the truth, conducting their lives in the truth, just as the Father from whom we received the commandment. Now, Kruse on 3 and 4, despite what the Gnostics say, God's grace will be with true believers, and these true believers are living according to the gospel. John also affirms that Jesus was teaching what the Father wanted to be passed on. He affirms the co-eternal co-equality of the Father and the Son. And he affirms that Christ is the one who is the Son in truth and the Son in love. Huiou aletheia kai agape. And then if we go on to block 3, we'll take a look at verse 5 and the command, love one another. Verse 5, but now, dear lady, I ask you, not that which is a new commandment, but one which we heard from the beginning. Let us love one another. In the Greek, now I implore you, a commandment we have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. Kruse on verse 5, John asks the church to persist in their mutual love for one another And he gets the command from the Lord's Supper, the Last Supper. It's the Last Supper, and it is John, Gospel of John 13:34. A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. That is the command given at the Last Supper. And so at the very beginning of this very short letter of 2 John, we've got John reaching back in memory to the Last Supper and the teaching at the Last Supper, which was all about what? Christ affirming, I and the Father are one. That was part of the teaching at the Last Supper. And then also teaching through the ministry of foot washing to be humble and contrite and to love one another. And then he gave the command to love one another. So just like in 1 John, 2 John is all about the teachings that Jesus gave at the Last Supper. And it is a very brief letter addressed to the church. It's the church referred to as she, just like the daughter of Zion for Israel. The church is referred to the new Israel, and also in the feminine, and its members or its children of God. And so it's a short letter addressed to the faithful church. It is a letter addressed to the faithful church. And John commends them, the true believers, for conducting their lives according to the gospel and according to the truth, which is actually the person of Christ, who they have in their hearts and in their mind. And then he closes out with the very important commandment given at the Last Supper in John 13:34, to love one another. And he says, it's not a new commandment, it's a commandment we heard from the very beginning. And remember, we discussed this before, but in the first century, John considered the commandment to love one another to be part of the gospel message. When John proclaimed the gospel, it included the ethic, it included the new commandment. That was part of the gospel. So the gospel was a couple things. It was the proclamation that Jesus is the Christ, and it was the proclamation, love one another as Christ loved us. So in the first century in Ephesus, the gospel had two parts. Jesus is the Christ. He came in the flesh. The Gnostics denied this. John said true believers will affirm that Christ came in the flesh. Jesus is the Christ. And they will live their lives according to the new commandment, to love one another. All of this comes together as making up the gospel in the first century to John in Ephesus. It is the proclamation, of course, that Jesus is the Christ, that he died and that he rose again for our salvation. Of course, it includes that proclamation. But then it includes the teaching at the Last Supper. That becomes part of the gospel. To become contrite and humble and to love one another as Christ has loved us. So it's a very good beginning to 2 John, and 2 John is the big total of one chapter. It's just going to be one chapter. So it's going to be pretty quick. It really is just, to me, it's like a continuation of 1 John. But we're going to continue on through 2 John here. So our next lesson will take up verses 6 through 10, and we will continue on in this very brief letter of 2 John.